Welcome to Lesson 5, Making the Best Selections. Creating a good selection in Photoshop is a critical skill. Selections allow you to isolate areas in an image for retouching, painting, copying, or pasting. If done correctly, selections are inconspicuous to the viewer. If not, images can look contrived or over-manipulated. In this video, I'm just going to show you some of the techniques that are covered in Lesson 5 of the Photoshop Digital Classroom book. First of all, I have an image open and I want to quickly just run through some of the selection techniques. You'll see that my Marquee selection tools are available up here in the Tools panel. If I select the Marquee tool, the rectangular one, and click and drag, I can make any size marquee. If I have an existing selection and I make another one, it disappears. If I want to add to a selection, I hold the Shift key down. You'll see my cursor changes into a plus sign and I can add a selection. If I want to delete from my selection, I hold down my Option or Alt key and you'll see I now have a minus sign and I can delete from the selection. Now the important thing to note is this. I'm mixing my selection tools up, so I'll take my lasso tool and do a really quick selection of this car, not necessarily a good one. So I hold down my Shift key and I click and drag to add the selection and also come down and intersect with my existing selection. I'll do this in several other areas as well. So what you don't want to do is this, and I see a lot of people do this. They hold the Shift key down and they kind of go right along the edge and then they let go. In this case, it happened to work, but I did miss this little area down here. You want to kind of encompass the whole area. Now, if I want to take something out of the selection, I hold down the Alt or Option key and I do the same thing. I select the entire area, almost like a chunk that needs to be taken out. So if I wanted to take this light out of the selection, I would come down along the edges and then go outside to take that selection out of that area. Now I'm going to press Control or Command D to deselect and take that out of being selected. I could also use the Select menu to deselect. I'm taking the rectangular Marquee tool and this time I'm holding the Shift key down. Notice that if I hold the Shift key down when I don't have a pre-existing selection, I can make a square. Now I'm going to deselect that, Control or Command D, hold down and select the elliptical Marquee tool, hold the Shift key down, and now of course I've got a circle. Now if I combine a couple of keys like the Alt and Shift or Option and Shift and pull from the center, you'll see that I can create my selection from the center and also have a circular selection. Now I'm going to deselect this, take my rectangular Marquee tool and click and drag in this grid area over here. I want you to know that if I make a selection and then I make a change, for instance, image adjustment curves, and I go in here and I start pulling this around, notice that my curve display options are set for pigment before I go any further. I'm going to click and drag this curve down. When I click OK, I have actually made a change to the pixels on this image within that selection area. If you want to be safe, it's a good idea to take advantage of adjustment layers as often as you can. So I'm going to undo this by pressing Control or Command Z. I'm going over to my Layers panel and I am choosing Create New Fill or Adjustment Layer, clicking on this and choosing Curves from here. I'm going to click on the panel menu to make sure that my curves display options are still set for pigment ink. And I am going to grab this curve and pull it down. And what you'll notice now is that I can turn off or on this selection change, or I can double click on this at any time, this icon over here to the left, and open up the curve again in the adjustment panel and make additional changes. So it's a really smart idea to try to make selections where you're not destroying your original file. Now I'm not going to show you all the selection techniques in Lesson 5, but I do want to show you a couple more. So I'm going to close this file, not save it, going back to Browse and Bridge, and I'm opening up PS0504. You'll see that I have probably a very difficult selection here if I wanted to put her in a different background. But I'm going to go ahead and start out using the Quick Selection tool. The brush is a little small, so I'm pressing the right bracket to make it a little bit bigger. These are the brackets that are off to the right of the letter P. So you got your left bracket to make it smaller, right bracket to make it larger. And I'm just going to do some quick swipes around this image. It's an okay selection, but geez, that would look really bad if I was trying to integrate this in a composite. So let's fix this. When you have any selection tool active, you can see Refine Edge up in the options bar. So I'm clicking on Refine Edge. I'm choosing the view that I want to see this on layers so I can see my edge selection a little bit better. You can choose on black or whatever method that helps you to see a little better. In fact, I'll leave this on black so you can see how this works. I'm now going into the edge detection section, and you'll see that over here is a Refine Radius tool. And if I select this tool and start painting, you'll see that it tries to refine my selection a bit. Look at the job it's doing with the hair. It's going in there and actually finding a better edge. Now, if I go too far, you'll see that I won't be able to see the true edge. I might erase a whole bunch of information out that I truly need. Well, that's why you have an erase refinements tool that you can go into, and you can erase items if you've gone too far and it comes back to the way it was. So you can kind of experiment with this and see what works best for you. You can choose to also see this on different views. So for instance, on layers, I can see even better that checkerboard is actually showing through those little pieces of hair. Now, my favorite part is the output section, because I can come down here and I can choose that I want to output this as a new layer with mask, or just a layer mask, or even a new document. I'm choosing that I just want to add a mask to this. And when I click Layer Mask and click OK, you'll see that I have an image and I have a mask. And that means that I can go in and paint this selection at any point if I want to improve or change it. Notice that if I Option or Alt click on this, you can see that mask and what a job it did on the hair. Now I'm clicking back on the image to show the image again. So I'm going to do one more example of masks and how you can use them when you're building composites. So I'm going to close this image up and not save it. I'm going to Browse and Bridge. I'm opening up the duck and the penguin. And I'm just going to do a quick selection of the duck. And I intentionally messed this up a little bit because I want to show you something. When I hit Q, it puts on something called Quick Mask. The Quick Mask is built on my selection. You can also click on this little button at the bottom of the Tools panel. But when I'm in here, I can take my paintbrush. I can adjust the size if necessary by pressing the right bracket to make it larger or left bracket to make it smaller. And you'll notice that when I paint with black, black is my foreground color, that I'm actually painting the mask material, which means if I press Q again to exit Quick Mask, that is no longer selected. So whatever is painted with the mask color will not be active. This gives you the opportunity to paint your selections. Now you'll notice as I paint this that my brush is relatively soft, which isn't giving me a nice hard edge. I'm going to undo this. I've already told you that pressing the right bracket or the left bracket makes your brush size larger or smaller. If you hold the Shift key down and press the right bracket, you actually make your brush harder. Now I'm pressing X because I want to swap my white and black, and you'll see that now I can paint back and get a much better edge. If I want to fix this edge, I'm just painting along that edge. If I want to come in here and adjust this, I may hit X and come back in and paint the masking material. So essentially giving me the opportunity to paint a mask, as I said earlier. Now I'm going to press Control-0. I'm hitting Q, that exits me. Couple things I can do at this point. If I wanted to create a layer mask right now, I really couldn't because I'm working on a background layer. But if I Alt or Option double click on background, it becomes a layer. And now I can click on Add Layer Mask, and I've got a mask attached to this so that I can continue painting on this later if I want. Like for instance, right down this edge, I can see it needs a little bit of help. So I make sure, click on the mask, press X to bring black forward, and just paint that a little bit. Now, if I want to change the opacity, maybe fade it in, I can press 5. That makes it a 50% opacity. You can see it's showing through a little bit there. I'm going to undo that. Maybe we'll do an 80% opacity and make the brush a little bit smaller and a little bit softer. So I'm pressing the left bracket and then the shift left bracket so that I can smooth out that edge just a little bit. Same with over here. So I'm not going to spend forever on this, but you can see how you can clean up your edges with a mask much better. And the great thing about this is that if I shift click on this mask, I've got my entire image here. So I really can't mess this up. I can go back and work on it as many times as I want, and it's relatively easy to use. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my move tool, and I'm going to take this entire layer and just select it and drag it up to the tab of the PS0506 image and then drop it in. And you'll see that now I've got my duck in this other image. And just for fun, I'm going to go up to Window to Animation. Make sure it's set for frame by clicking on this button down in the lower right. If you don't have the extended version, you will only have frames available. I'm taking this duck. I've got this layer here. I'm clicking on New, Duplicate Selected Frames, and I'm going to take this duck in the second frame and slide him over here. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on Tween and say, can you add 5 layers in between? And now I've got the duck moving along every 10 seconds. Let me select all of these. Change this to a 0.1 second, and now you'll see this a little better. And I can select each one of these frames and make a change to it. Go ahead and take that over there and pull that down. So now what I have is a duck walking across. Change it to forever. And now if you really wanted to, you've got your selection of your duck that you made. You've put them in the penguin image. You've created an animation. And if you wanted to use it, you could now save it out through Save for the Web as an animated GIF. So just some fun things you can do with selections. Read more about the selection techniques you should be using in Lesson 5 of the Digital Classroom book.